My name is Brenda Oyer. I'm 34 years old. If you'd met me just a few years ago, you might have thought I had the perfect life. A husband who adored me, two beautiful children, a home that smelled of vanilla candles and weekend pancakes. But even the most beautiful walls can hide cracks too deep to see until they split. Dev and I met when I was 21, still figuring out who I wanted to be. He was 23, charming, funny, a struggling freelance writer with eyes that carried the weight of the world. He told me once, "You make my life feel lighter." I believed him. For years, I made it my mission to keep that light alive. We dated for 2 years before he proposed a simple backyard proposal surrounded by fairy lights and family. I remember standing there in shock, smiling, even though something in me felt off. He'd barely spent on the ring. Kylie, my best friend, helped him choose it. It wasn't about money, it was the lack of effort, but I brushed it off, told myself love didn't need grand gestures. Kylie had been my best friend since we were 15. We'd survived everything together: teenage heartbreaks, bad haircuts, college rejections. She was like a sister. When I introduced her to Dev, they clicked instantly. She was good at making people feel comfortable, and he loved being the center of attention. Sometimes I'd find them laughing over something private, and I'd feel left out. It wasn't jealousy, I told myself, just nostalgia. Dev's mother, Mallory, entered my life shortly after. A widow, opinionated and emotionally unpredictable, she carried her grief like a badge and her son like a crutch. Dev adored her. He'd send her money every month, even when we struggled. When I tried to talk about balancing things, he'd snap, "She raised me alone, Brenda. The least I can do is take care of her." But it wasn't care, it was control. Mallory would visit us and glance around my home like she was measuring how much of it I'd earned versus inherited. Such a big place for someone so young, she'd remark, sipping wine. Dev always had to fight for everything. You're lucky you never had to. I laughed politely the first few times. Then I stopped laughing. I grew up comfortable, yes. Upper middle class parents who owned businesses, but they'd taught me independence early. I built my career managing brand collaborations before influencer marketing even became a term. I didn't live off my parents. I worked long hours, unpaid internships, climbing the ladder until I could stand on my own. Dev never saw it that way. You wouldn't understand the pressure of not having a safety net, he'd mutter when I asked him to help with bills. "Dev, I'm not asking for much, just your share." He'd scoff. "Your share? I'm sorry I wasn't born into luxury, Brenda." That was the first real fight. I remember standing in our kitchen, him yelling, me crying. The sink dripping between our pauses. It ended with me apologizing as always. He told me if I truly loved him, I'd stop asking him to pay rent and focus on building our future. I believed him. I paid the rent. I covered the utilities. He said it was temporary, but temporary became 12 years. And still I loved him. I thought marriage would fix us, that love could mature him. When we married, I wore my mother's pearl earrings and thought, this is forever. But forever started to feel one-sided. Dev sent money to Mallory every month, sometimes buying her expensive gifts he couldn't afford. Whenever I pointed it out, he'd get defensive. "You have no idea what it's like to grow up with nothing. She's my mother, she deserves this." I'd shrink back, feeling guilty. I didn't want to be the rich, ungrateful wife. I let it go. But guilt is a quiet poison. It makes you tolerate what should never be tolerated. Kylie was my escape. She was always there during pregnancy. Cravings, mood swings, and long, lonely nights when Dev said he was busy writing. I'd call her, and she'd listen, her voice warm and protective. "You're doing amazing," she'd say. "He's just overwhelmed." It helped having her, but sometimes when Dev and Kylie were together during family gatherings or parties, I'd notice a flicker, a look that lingered a second too long. Once I walked into the kitchen during a dinner party and found them standing close, whispering about something. They jumped apart when they saw me. Kylie laughed it off. "We were just talking about your birthday surprise." I smiled, pretending not to notice the unease crawling up my spine. Later that night, I hugged her goodbye, and when she leaned in, I smelled her perfume on Dev's jacket, jasmine and vanilla. My favorite scent. I told myself it was just from the hug. That's what best friends do. Dev proposed in our backyard that night, the same backyard where I'd smelled another woman's perfume. Everyone cheered. Kylie cried tears of joy. My mother hugged me, whispering, "You found your forever." But even as I said yes, I felt something hollow echo inside me. That night, lying in bed, Dev asleep beside me, I stared at the ring on my finger. It gleamed in the dim light, simple, small, perfect in its imperfection. I wanted to believe this was happiness, but a small, quiet voice in my chest whispered, "Some cracks don't show until the light hits them." And that whisper never really went away. When I became pregnant with our first child, I thought things would finally change, that Dev would step up, that his love would transform into partnership. Instead, I learned that sometimes a baby doesn't fix what's broken, it just exposes the fracture lines you've been pretending not to see. The moment I told Dev I was pregnant, his first words weren't joy or surprise, they were panic. "Brenda, we can't afford this right now. You should keep working as long as possible." I forced a smile. "Of course, we'll figure it out together." But we didn't figure it out together. I figured it out alone. My pregnancy was difficult. Morning sickness that lasted till noon, exhaustion that turned my bones to sand. When my doctor told me I had to take leave, Dev didn't congratulate me, he frowned. "So what are we supposed to live on now?" My writing doesn't make enough. I bit my tongue because how do you explain to the man you love that you're terrified not just of giving birth, but of doing it with someone who sees you as a liability? I went to my parents for advice, my mother ever practical sided with him. "He's right, dear. Women work through pregnancy all the time. You'll be fine." But my father saw the truth immediately. He called Dev that night and told him firmly that if he didn't step up, he'd lose me. For the first time, Dev went quiet. The next morning, he started paying bills, cooking breakfast, pretending to be the perfect husband. I wanted to believe it was real. When our son James was born, my world tilted. I'd never known love could be that pure. But I was also never as exhausted, terrified, and lonely as I was in those first weeks. Dev was absent. He'd come home late saying he was working, but I'd find no new writing drafts on his laptop. When I asked for help, he'd groan, "You're better at this mom stuff than I am. Don't make me mess it up." And his mother, Mallory, oh, she was there all right, standing at the nursery door with her judgmental eyes offering nothing but criticism. "You're feeding him too often. You're not losing the baby weight fast enough. You should be grateful Dev tolerates your moods." Her words dripped like venom, dressed as advice. I tried to talk to my own mother about it, about how tired and numb I felt. She dismissed me with a smile. "Every mother feels that way at first. Don't be dramatic, Brenda. You're stronger than this." But I wasn't. I was breaking in ways no one could see. The truth is, I was drowning in postpartum depression, though back then, I didn't even have the words for it. Some days, I'd stand by the crib and cry without knowing why. Some nights, I'd watch Dev sleep wondering if he even saw me anymore. It's strange when the people who are supposed to love you most refuse to see your pain, you start believing you're invisible. Kylie was the only one who noticed. She'd visit every evening after work, bringing soup holding James so I could shower. She'd say things like, "You're too good for him, you know that," and I'd laugh because it sounded like something only a best friend could say. She became my lifeline, my little island of understanding in a sea of silence. When James turned 1, I found out I was pregnant again. It wasn't planned, we'd been fighting more often, sleeping apart half the time. I stared at the test result in disbelief. Dev's reaction was instant and cruel. "You're kidding me. Brenda, we can't do this again. You need to take care of the one we already have." He stormed out, leaving me sitting on the bathroom floor with tears mixing into the sink water. That night, I made a decision. If he wouldn't be the provider, I would. I called my old boss and asked for freelance work. She said yes immediately. The relief that followed wasn't just about money, it was about control. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing again. When I told Dev, he smiled not with pride, but with convenience. Good, maybe now I can finally take a break. He quit his job the next week. Days blurred into weeks, me juggling deadlines, laundry bottles, and a toddler, him glued to a screen, lost in video games. Sometimes when I left for client meetings, I'd drop James at my parents' house, only to come home and find Dev exactly where I left him, controller in hand, soda cans scattered like confetti of wasted potential. One afternoon, I stood behind him, baby on my hip, exhaustion painting dark circles under my eyes. "Dev, when are you going to start looking for work again?" He didn't even look up. "Can we not do this right now? I'm in the middle of a match." Something inside me snapped, not loud, just final. "You're always in the middle of something, Dev, just never in the middle of us." He paused the game, finally turning to face me. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's just temporary." Temporary, that word again. When I went into labor with Nina, Dev didn't answer my calls. Later, he claimed his phone was dead. But I knew it wasn't just the battery that had died, it was us. Kylie didn't answer either. I told myself she was busy. But when I saw her the next day, guilt flickered across her face before she smiled and said, Oh, Brenda, I'm so sorry. I was working late. Something in her tone made me pause. It was too smooth, too practiced. I brushed it off, just like I brushed off the scent of her perfume that had once lingered on my husband's jacket. I didn't realize then that the loneliness I felt wasn't just from neglect. It was the loneliness of being the only one who didn't know the truth. Because betrayal doesn't start with a kiss. It starts with the quiet moments when someone stops looking at you and starts looking through you. And by the time I saw it, it was already too late. After Nina was born, life fell into a rhythm that wasn't living, just surviving. Every day blurred into the next. Feed the baby. Answer work emails. Pretend not to notice the silence that had settled between me and Dev like fog in an empty house. Dev stopped pretending to look for work altogether. He'd sleep until noon, wake up irritated if the kids made too much noise, then disappear to his friend Clinton's apartment for gaming nights. Clinton was a bitter divorcee, the kind of man who wore resentment like cologne. The few times I met him, his smirk told me everything he didn't respect women, and he thought Dev was a victim. "Man, you've got it rough," I once overheard Clinton say through the phone. "Women with money, they think they own you." I remember standing in the doorway, frozen, listening as Dev laughed instead of defending me. That laugh hurt more than any insult. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that he'd snap out of it, that we'd find our way back to love. But deep down, I knew I was the only one fighting for this marriage. Sometimes when Dev came home, I'd try to talk. "Dev, we can't go on like this. You haven't worked in months. We need you." He'd roll his eyes. "Brenda, I'm tired. You get to stay home with the kids all day while I deal with stress. You don't understand what that's like." I wanted to scream to tell him that staying home wasn't rest. It was work without weekends, pain without pay. But instead, I just went quiet. That's what women like me do. We go quiet until silence becomes our second language. Still, I tried to keep some dignity. I started saving half my freelance income secretly in a separate account. A quiet rebellion, a lifeline for the day I might need to stand alone. Then came the night that should have been our turning point, but instead became a prophecy. I was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, but hopeful. I had just finished a project that brought in enough to pay all our bills for 3 months. I made dinner-lit candles. I wanted to feel like a couple again, even just for one evening. But Dev didn't come home. His phone went unanswered. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. When he finally stumbled in near dawn, he smelled of cheap whiskey and jasmine perfume, Kylie's perfume. "Where were you?" I asked softly, too tired to yell. He rubbed his forehead. "Clinton's. We were talking about my job situation." I looked at him, the lie too effortless, too clean. "You reek of perfume." He shrugged. Maybe Clinton's girlfriend was there. But Clinton didn't have a girlfriend. He never did. I didn't argue. I just turned away and tucked Nina into her crib, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. That one day she'd know what real love looked like. Weeks later, I went into labor. It happened fast, contractions out of nowhere, panic rising in my chest. I called Dev's phone 3 times. No answer. I called Kylie, straight to voicemail. So my parents drove me to the hospital. My father held my hand through every contraction while I tried not to sob. By the time Dev arrived hours after Nina was born, I'd already made up my mind about something I couldn't yet admit to myself. The man I loved didn't exist anymore. Only his shadow remained. Kylie came the next day, all bright smiles and apologies. "I'm so sorry, Brenda. I was swamped with work. I didn't even see your calls until this morning." Her voice shook just enough to sound sincere. She brought flowers, lilies. My favorite. Dev's least favorite. He'd once told me lilies smelled like funerals. Maybe he was right, because something inside me had died that day, the part that still believed in us. Weeks passed. I recovered. Dev remained the same. Days on the couch, controller in hand, nights out with Clinton. I stopped asking where, stopped asking why. I was tired of begging for decency. Then one evening, after a particularly long day at work, I came home to find Dev sitting in the dark staring at me. His eyes were cold. "I saw the bank statements," he said flatly. "You've been hiding money." My chest tightened. "It's for the kids, Dev. For emergencies." He leaned forward, voice rising. "You don't trust me. You've been planning to leave, haven't you?" I swallowed hard. "I've been planning to survive." That night, he didn't speak to me. The air between us turned heavy, suffocating. The next morning, he was gone before sunrise. He didn't leave a note, but he did leave his phone unlocked on the table, something he never did. For a moment, I almost checked it. Almost. But fear stopped me. Fear of confirming what my heart already knew. So I left it there. I made breakfast. I packed James's lunch. I rocked Nina to sleep. I played my part, the dutiful wife, the selfless mother. the quiet woman who stayed. But in the quiet of that morning, as I stared at his empty coffee mug, a thought crept in that I couldn't shake. Maybe love isn't meant to be this lonely. And for the first time in 12 years, I felt something like courage stirring in my chest. It was faint, fragile, but it was there. I didn't know it yet, but courage would be the only thing I'd have left soon, because the truth was already on its way to finding me. And when it did, it would burn everything I thought I knew about love, friendship, and family to ashes. It was an ordinary morning, or at least it started that way. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen blinds, soft and golden, wrapping the house in deceptive calm. Nina was still asleep in her crib, and James was building Lego towers on the floor, humming to himself. I was folding laundry, my hands moving on autopilot, when Dev's phone buzzed on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't have looked. But that morning, something in me hesitated. A sixth sense, or maybe just the quiet ache of too many unasked questions. The message preview flashed on the screen before it faded. Just one line. "Will you tell her about us? I'm pregnant and can't hold it off any longer." The world fell silent. For a full minute, I didn't move, didn't breathe. It felt like every sound, the rustle of fabric, the hum of the fridge, had been swallowed whole. Then slowly, I picked up the phone. The name on the screen hit me harder than the words themselves. Kylie. My fingers went cold. My heart, that stupid, loyal heart, refused to understand. I opened the message thread. It was all there. Weeks. Months. Messages filled with plans, with lies, with intimacy, disguised as regret. "She doesn't get you like I do. You deserve someone who listens. I can't wait for us to be a real family." Every sentence was a blade, and I had bled for years without realizing it. When Dev came out of the shower, towel draped over his shoulder, humming like the world was fine, he froze. I was standing in the doorway holding his phone. Our eyes met, and in that instant he knew. "Brenda," he started, stepping forward. I slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed through the kitchen, sharp and clean. Years of silence cracked open in that single strike. He blinked, stunned. "It's not what you think." "Don't you dare insult my intelligence," I said, voice shaking but cold. "You slept with her. My best friend. The woman who held my babies, who comforted me while you disappeared." He stammered words tumbling over each other. "It just happened. We were talking, I was vulnerable, and she—" "Don't you dare make her the villain to protect your guilt," I hissed. "You both chose this." He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. "It was a mistake, Brenda. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I love you." I laughed, not the kind that comes from humor, but from disbelief. "You love me. You used me. You drained me. And now you expect me to pity you." The baby cried from the next room, startled by the shouting. Dev flinched, but didn't move. I brushed past him, picked up Nina, held her close. My tears fell onto her tiny shoulder as I whispered, "It's okay, baby. Mama's got you." When I turned back, Dev was crying, but not from remorse. From fear. He knew what he was about to lose. The house. The security. The version of himself I had built for him. He whispered, "Please don't leave me. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about them," I said, my voice suddenly calm, "and that's why I'm leaving." I packed everything that mattered. In under an hour. Clothes, documents, toys. The small things that made the house feel like mine. I moved like a ghost, efficient and silent. Dev kept begging, trailing behind me. "We can fix this, Brenda. Please, you're overreacting." Overreacting. That word almost made me laugh again. When I stepped outside, my father's car was already pulling up. He took one look at my face and said nothing. Just opened the back door and helped me load the kids in. Dev stood at the doorway, tears streaking down his face, hands trembling. "You're ruining our family." I turned back one last time. "You already did." The drive to my parents' house felt endless. The children slept in the back seat, unaware that their entire world had just shifted. My father's hand reached for mine as we stopped at a red light. "You don't have to explain," he said quietly. "You just have to breathe." When we arrived, my mother was waiting at the door. For a moment, I thought she'd hug me, but instead she frowned. "Brenda, what happened? Why did you bring the children here like this?" "I left Dev," I whispered. Her eyes widened, but not with shock, with disapproval. "You shouldn't make rash decisions. He's still your husband. You have children together." "I found out he's been sleeping with Kylie." Her face went pale, then tightened into a mask I didn't recognize. "Kylie. That can't be right. Maybe there's a misunderstanding." I felt something break again, not as loud as the first time, but deeper. "Mom, I saw the messages. She's pregnant. It's true." She shook her head, muttering no, no, she wouldn't, and walked away, refusing to look me in the eye. That night I lay awake in my old room, surrounded by the echoes of my teenage posters and childhood books. James slept beside me, Nina, in a crib by the window. I listened to their breathing and tried to remind myself that I was still alive, that this wasn't the end. But the truth was, it was the end. The end of the woman who made excuses. The end of believing that love meant endurance. As I stared at the ceiling, I thought about Kylie's last message. I can't hold it off any longer. No, neither could I. Tomorrow I would start over, no matter how much it hurt. But I didn't know then that betrayal was a poison that seeps deeper than you expect. And that my mother, the woman I had turned to for comfort, was already standing on the wrong side of the line. The day it all collapsed didn't come with thunder or warning. It came with laundry and sunlight and the hum of the washing machine. Nina was napping. James was on the floor, building his Lego city. I was folding shirts, his shirts, when his phone vibrated on the counter. Normally, I'd ignore it. But this time my hands hesitated. Maybe it was habit, maybe instinct. The screen lit up for a second long enough to show a message preview. Will you tell her about us? I'm pregnant and can't hold it off any longer. The world went quiet. My breath, the hum of the washer, even James's voice, all vanished. The name on the screen burned through me, Kylie. My throat closed. My pulse roared. The message thread was open before I knew what I was doing. Words scrolled like knives. You shouldn't have to hide. I can't wait to start our new life. She doesn't make you happy the way I do. Each one shredded something I'd tried so hard to hold together. When Dev stepped out of the shower towel on his neck, humming like life was normal, I just stood there with his phone in my hand. His face went pale. Brenda, what are you doing with my... I didn't wait for him to finish. My palm met his cheek before I even realized I'd moved. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. How long, I asked. My voice didn't even sound like mine. He stared, stunned, stammering. Brenda, it's not. She was... Don't lie. She's pregnant. You both knew what you were doing. He ran a hand through his wet hair. It was a mistake. I was lost. You were always busy. And Kylie. I laughed. A sharp, broken sound. Kylie comforted you while I was breaking my back to keep this family alive. He stepped for Oye. I didn't mean to hurt you. You meant to use me, I said. And when I ran out of patience, you found someone easier. For once, he couldn't talk his way out. The baby's cry cut through the silence. Dev didn't move. I did. I picked up Nina, pressing her tiny head to my chest while tears slipped down my face. He whispered, Brenda, don't do this. Think about the kids. I am thinking about them, I said. That's why I'm leaving. I packed fast papers, closed diapers, my laptop. Dev followed me from room to room, voice breaking. You can't take them away. We can fix this. You can fix it with her, I said quietly. My father's car pulled up outside. Dev stood frozen in the doorway as my father helped me carry the bags out. You're ruining our family, Dev shouted. I turned back once. You ruined it the day you made me feel small. The drive to my parents' house was a blur. James slept against my shoulder. My father's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He didn't say a word until we stopped at a red light. He doesn't deserve another word from you, he said softly. At home, my mother was waiting. I expected open arms. Instead, her voice was cool. Brenda, what's going on? You can't just move back here with the children. What about Dev? He cheated Mom with Kylie. Her expression flickered, then settled into disbelief. That's absurd. Kylie. She would never. I saw the messages. She's pregnant. She turned away, muttering, You must have misunderstood. That denial hurt worse than the slap I'd given Dev. Because betrayal from a friend is pain, but denial from a mother, it's a wound that doesn't clot. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, the same one, with faded posters from college. The children slept soundly beside me, their breathing soft and even. The house felt safe, but I didn't. I kept hearing my mother's voice. She would never. And somewhere deep inside, I felt a chill. Because sometimes when people refuse to see the truth, it's not disbelief. It's guilt. The days after leaving, Dev blurred together like an old film reel. Muted voices, half-remembered meals, nights without sleep. My body was in my parents' house, but my mind was trapped somewhere between anger and disbelief. Dev called nonstop. Dozens of missed calls. Dozens of texts. Each one a mixture of begging and manipulation. Please, Brenda, don't destroy our family. I made a mistake. Think about the kids. You're not perfect either. You pushed me away. I didn't answer a single one, but his words clung to me, whispering doubts in the dark when I tried to rest. Then came Kylie's message. A single paragraph that made my stomach twist. I'm so sorry for how this happened. Dev and I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. I love him, Brenda. And now that I'm carrying his child, I have to think about my baby. Maybe it's time you think about your happiness too. My happiness. She stole my husband and thought she was giving me freedom. I threw my phone across the room and screamed into a pillow until my voice was gone. My father rushed in and held me without saying a word. My mother stood at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. That night, while my father tucked James into bed, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "Brenda," she began softly, "maybe you should hear them out before making decisions you'll regret." I blinked. Regret. He cheated on me. With Kylie. "I know, dear, but these things happen. People make mistakes. You have 2 children, don't punish them for adult problems." My voice rose before I could stop it. "You think I'm punishing them?" He tore this family apart. Her eyes hardened. "You can't erase him from their lives. And you shouldn't try." She walked away before I could respond. But that was the first moment something inside me shifted. It wasn't just her words, it was her tone. Calm. Calculated. Like she'd already chosen which side she was on. The next morning I overheard her on the phone. Her voice was low, but I recognized it. "She's stubborn. Yes, I'll talk to her again. We need to make her see reason." My blood went cold. Who was she talking to? That evening, my father took me to see a lawyer. The prenup made everything clear. Dev would get nothing. The house, the car, even the savings were under my name. The lawyer assured me, "This will be quick. He doesn't have a case." For the first time, I exhaled. But relief never lasts long in stories like mine. 2 days later, my mother knocked on my door holding a cup of tea. Her hands trembled slightly. "Brenda," she said gently, "you need to think about the children's future." "I am." "No, I mean their stability. Dev is their father. Maybe you should let him have full custody. He could raise them with Kylie. They'll have siblings soon. It could be good for them." I froze, staring at her as the words sank in. "You're joking." She shook her head. "He's more stable than you right now. You're emotional, exhausted, depressed." "Don't you dare use my depression against me," I shouted. "You of all people should know why I had it, because your precious son-in-law left me to drown." She flinched, but didn't back down. "You're not thinking clearly. Maybe Kylie isn't the enemy you think she is. Maybe—" I slammed my hand on the table so hard the teacup shattered. "Stop saying her name." The noise brought my father running. When he saw my mother's face calm, cold, calculating, his voice dropped to a growl. "What's going on?" I told him everything. Every strange comment, every suggestion, every word that made my skin crawl. He turned to her, jaw clenched. "Is this true?" She didn't deny it. She sighed like a tired teacher explaining a lesson to children. "I met with Kylie, all right. I wanted to understand her side. She's scared David. She's having a baby and she's all alone. I thought if she and Dev could raise all the kids together, maybe it would heal everyone." Heal. My father's voice shook. "You betrayed your daughter to comfort her husband's mistress." "Brenda isn't well," my mother snapped. "She had postpartum depression. She's unstable. I thought I was protecting the children." Her words hit me harder than Dev's betrayal ever did. I whispered, "You told her that, didn't you? You told Kylie I was unstable." Silence. That was her answer. My father's face turned red with fury. "Get out," he said quietly. She blinked. "David, get out!" He pointed to the door. She looked at me one last time, her lips trembling, but there was no apology in her eyes. Just fear. When the door shut behind her, I collapsed to the floor. My father knelt beside me, wrapping his arms around me as I shook. "You still have me," he whispered. "You and those kids, you'll be fine." But even in his arms, I felt hollow. Because betrayal from a lover wounds the heart. Betrayal from a friend scars the soul. But betrayal from your own mother, that kills something inside you forever. That night, I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold and white. I thought about Kylie's child, about my mother's quiet lies, about the kind of love that destroys everything it touches. And I promised myself one thing. No one will ever make me feel small again. Not him, not her, not anyone. The next morning, I called my lawyer and said, "File it. File the divorce. I want full custody." It was time to stop being the woman who waited to be saved. It was time to save myself. 6 months later, I sat in the same courthouse where I'd once signed my marriage license, only this time I was signing my freedom papers. The air smelled of dust and paper, and yet it felt cleaner than it had in years. Dev sat a few seats away, head bowed, suit wrinkled. Fingers fidgeting with his tie. He looked smaller somehow, like the version of himself he'd always tried to hide was finally all that was left. When the judge asked if I had any last words before the ruling, I stood up. My hands didn't shake. My voice was steady. "Your Honor, this man did not just betray me. He abandoned his children, neglected his family, and left me to bear the weight of everything alone. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to end what should have ended long ago." Dev looked up, eyes glistening. Brenda, please. I interrupted softly. You've said enough. The judge spoke, his voice a blur until one phrase cut through everything. Full custody aoyered to the mother. It was over. Dev's lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Dev didn't move. His face crumpled, not from remorse, but from loss. The kind of loss that only hurts when you realize your control is gone. I gathered my documents, thanked my lawyer, and walked out without looking back. In the hallway, I saw her Mallory. Her once perfect hair was gray at the roots, her lipstick uneven. She looked at me with pleading eyes. Brenda, he's suffering. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive my son? I stopped, turned slowly, and met her gaze. Forgive him. He destroyed his own family. You raised him to believe women were caretakers, not partners. You didn't just lose a son-in-law today. You lost your reflection. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked ashamed. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit my face. It was warm, real. My father was waiting at the car, holding Nina on his hip, while James tugged at his sleeve. It's done, he asked. I nodded. It's done. He smiled. Let's go home. Home. A word that finally meant peace, not performance. The weeks that followed felt different. Quieter, lighter. My mornings weren't filled with tension or fear. I'd wake up to the sound of my children's laughter, the smell of pancakes, and the warmth of sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, my new version of joy. I started journaling again, not to document pain, but to remember the woman I was before I bent myself into someone else's comfort. I worked, I laughed, I lived. Then, one afternoon, my mother showed up at my father's doorstep. She looked older, not just in years, but in regret. Her once perfectly styled hair was undone, her makeup faded. She clutched a small notebook to her chest. Brenda, she said softly, I've been going to therapy. Your father insisted. I know I can't undo what I did, but I needed to say it to your face. I was wrong. I let fear and pride blind me. I thought I was protecting everyone, but all I did was destroy you. I wanted to be angry, to tell her I didn't forgive her, but when I looked at her trembling hands, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Humility. You can't fix it, I said quietly, but maybe you can learn from it. She nodded, tears falling silently. I'm trying. My father didn't let her move back in, but he didn't slam the door either. Sometimes healing isn't reconciliation, it's just the absence of hatred. As for Kylie, she reached out once months after my divorce. A single text, I wish I could take it all back. I didn't reply. But I heard from her mother later that Kylie was raising the baby alone, cut off from her family, and that Dev wanted nothing to do with her. Karma had arrived on schedule, quiet, precise, and fair. Mallory, too, stopped calling. I heard she'd moved to another city after Dev's breakdown, the shame too heavy to carry, where everyone knew the truth. And Dev, he still sends the monthly child support. Though sometimes it's late, but I don't care. I don't need it. What I have now can't be measured in money. It's peace, and I've paid enough for it. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I stood by the window watching the city lights shimmer like distant stars. The reflection in the glass didn't look broken anymore. I thought of all the women who stay too long, who mistake endurance for love, silence for peace, and guilt for duty. I thought of the woman I used to be bending, forgiving, waiting. And I whispered to her, You survived. You made it out. You're free. The night air drifted through the window, carrying the faint laughter of my children from the next room. I smiled. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to come home. Because home wasn't someone I loved anymore, it was me. I thought betrayal ended my story, I said softly to the empty room. But maybe it was the fire that forged me.